In this video, I'll show you some of the amazing things there are to see at the Porsche Museum in 2024, and it all starts right now. Arriving at the current Porsche Museum in Stuttgart, which opened in January of 2009 at a cost of over 100 million euros, is truly an event. The museum is used to showcase and celebrate over 75 years of Porsche sports cars. You certainly can't miss the amazing Porsche monument when approaching the 65,000 square feet of area, hosting over 80 exhibits. And by the way, I encourage you to stick around to the end of this video because I've got a great tip on how you can make your museum visit truly unforgettable. As you enter the museum lobby, it's really not obvious from the beautiful surroundings that currently Porsche is at a turning point, since Porsche has a clear commitment to electric mobility, which will massively transform Porsche's product range starting in 2025 with the first 911 hybrid street car. Porsche says at first sight, digitalization and electric mobility seem to be in contradiction to the company's history. But in the future, it'll increasingly be our task to show the origins and therefore the experience of Porsche in automotive engineering through modern channels. The museum showcases a clear commitment to the roots of the sports car manufacturer. In 1898, Ferdinand Porsche builds an electric car with front-wheel stub axle steering and an octagon electric motor. The name is derived from the enclosed 8-sided motor housing, which weighs in at just 130 kilograms, features shock absorbers, and is suspended and oscillated around the rear axle. The car speed is regulated by a 12-speed controller with 6 forward gears, 2 reverse gears, and 4 braking levels. 4 vehicles based on this chassis are made with different body constructions by Viennese carriage manufacturer Ludwig Lohner. One of them won the first prize in a 40-kilometer race in the context of the first International Motor Show in Berlin in 1899. The Egger-Lohner C2 Phaeton is the oldest construction still in existence on which Ferdinand Porsche participated. The Lohner Porsche Semper Vivus, with a petrol-electric mixed drive built in 1900, is regarded as the first operational full hybrid car. To increase the driving range, 2 Dion combustion engines each powered an electric generator which supplied the wheel hub motors with electricity. In 2007, this fully functional Semper Vivus replica was built and finished by specialists in just 3 years. Ferdinand Porsche was a very particular man. He said, "In the beginning, I looked around and could not find the car I dreamed of. So I decided to build it myself." Ferdinand Anton Ernst Ferry Porsche followed his decision up with action. He designed the Porsche 356 No. 1 Roadster together with a small team of creative engineers at the Porsche engineering office in Gmünd, Carinthia. The agile 2-seater hit the road in summer of 1948. This marked the beginning of the story of the sports car manufacturer Porsche. Porsche has in its possession the brand's very first car, Porsche 356 No. 1 Roadster from 1948. Over the years, that car has passed through many hands and was damaged, repaired, and refurbished. To mark the 70 years of Porsche sports cars anniversary in 2018, Porsche decided to build this show car that would represent the original state of the No. 1 as faithfully as possible, albeit without an engine, which at the time was a modified Volkswagen engine. Working by hand with the same materials and tools as back then, the specialist created a version that's true to the original in every detail and dimension.
And the displays are just amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, I've seen museums before but this thing is absolutely just first rate when you look around.
The 550A Spider made its debut in 1956 as the first Porsche built specifically for racing. Rather than featuring a flat frame, it's built on a lighter and more rigid lattice tube frame. In 1956, Umberto Maglioli takes a surprising overall victory at the Targa Florio, bringing worldwide recognition to the budding Porsche company. For the first time, a car with a displacement of up to 2 liters succeeds in beating much more powerful cars from the larger displacement classes. With a lead of almost 15 minutes on the second-place finisher, Maglioli well and truly outclasses the opposition. Parallel to the development of the Roadster, Ferry Porsche and his team worked on a coupe with the rear engine and 2 jump seats in the rear. The 356-2 was manufactured by hand in a small series of 52 cars in Gmünd, Austria. Until 1950, 44 coupes and 8 cabriolets were built. The complex tubular space frame of the Roadster was replaced by a sheet metal box frame. The low weight and excellent aerodynamics of the aluminum coupes allowed for top speed of about 140 kilometers per hour, remarkable at the time when considering the small output. Porsche fans and club members live the excitement of the brand and share the enthusiasm for sports cars with their own kind. With self-created grille badges for the rear-mounted grille, the members of the Porsche Cosmos proudly symbolize their sense of community. The Mannesmann subsidiary Porsche Diesel sold the Super L 318 under license. Its modern ZF gearbox distinguished it from its predecessor, the Super L 308. The gearbox featured a mower drive and power takeoff at the rear with 3 functions which could be switched individually.
Friend Horst had a beautiful Porsche 904 like this in the day, and although we weren't friends at that time, he told me that he traded his pristine 300 SL Mercedes for this car, and it had been in an accident. This car, the 904, had been in an accident, and he had to repair quite a bit of it. And I remember he told me that this part of the body in through here, he had to make a new fiberglass mold for it to recreate that part of the body so that he could get it back ready and racing. And he raced it for many years. Gorgeous car. He also ran it on the street. He said it was unbelievably loud and very intimidating to all the traffic around him.
As early as the 1950s, Porsche fitted sports cars with blue lights, sirens, and indicator lamps. The 356C Cabriolet patrolled the streets in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia as of 1964. The acceleration, top speed, and 4-disc brakes provided an extremely sporty car. The Porsche police drivers had to complete a driver training program at Weissach. The last 10 356C Cabriolets were built in May 1966 and went to the highway patrol in the Netherlands. Ferdinand Alexander Porsche came up with a groundbreaking design for a 2+2 seater in 1959. The front section and the progression of its beltline already anticipated features of the later 901. Subsequently, this drivable prototype with a 4-cylinder engine in the rear was built on the modified chassis of a 356 that had been lengthened by 200 millimeters. Body development used it as a sample car in Technical Program 7. Later on, the design team led by F.A. Alexander Porsche developed the Type 901 in the T8 program based on this model. The Porsche company's testing department gave the prototypes of the successor to the 356, that being the 901, affectionate nicknames like Sturmvogel or Stormbird in the wind tunnel, and Quickblau and Zitronenfalter based on their blue and yellow paintwork respectively. The 901 was tested and unveiled at the Frankfurt Auto Show on the 12th of September 1963. But Peugeot complained, since they had the rights to 3-digit model names with a 0 in the middle. So Ferrari Porsche gave the instruction on the 22nd of October 1964 to rename the Porsche 901 to the Porsche 911. A number that most of us have dreamed of owning ever since. Later in 1965, the Targa version made its debut. You can see here from the numerous posters that racing, mostly in various sports car classes, was always in Porsche's DNA, including high-profile races like Le Mans, Sebring, and of course the Nürburgring. In 1969, Porsche secured the first Makes World Championship title with the 908-02 Spider. The technical regulations stipulated neither a minimum weight, nor a roof, luggage compartment, or spare wheel. Featuring an aluminum space frame, a 13-kilogram plastic body, titanium axles, and a new 5-speed gearbox, the 908-02 Spider weighed just 600 kilograms. The frame could be fitted with compressed air as a way to detect damage. With 50 major victories and more than 100 podium results within 4 years, the 908-02 Spider is one of the most successful Porsche race cars. The first Porsche 917 was unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show in March 1969. The car was used as a test and presentation car throughout its lifetime and never took part in an actual race. Test drives on the Nürburgring and Weissach skid pad as part of the Frankfurt International Motor Show in 1969. When Porsche announced its collaboration with Wire, the car was repainted in light blue and orange, the colors of the sponsor. Following the first overall victory at Le Mans in 1970, it was converted to the successful short-tail version for marketing purposes. This is one of the fastest racing cars that Le Mans has ever seen, the long-tail version of the Porsche 917. It's specially designed for the classic 24-hour race. In 1970, Vic Elford achieved the fastest practice time at Le Mans, becoming the first driver to break the sound barrier of an average lap speed of 240 kilometers per hour. After intensive work in the wind tunnel, he reached the speed of 387 kilometers per hour on the 6-kilometer-long Mulsanne Straight the following year. However, despite the extended tail, Porsche failed to record an overall victory in 3 years.
I've always been a huge fan of the Porsche 914. I don't know why. It was never very well received because of its Volkswagen roots. In fact, I believe it was actually marketed as a Volkswagen in Europe. But in North America, it was marketed as a Porsche. It was definitely a collaboration between the two of them. But like I say, I've always loved them.
For the head of development at that time, Ferdinand Pache, Porsche built a 914S with an 8-cylinder racing engine adopted from the Porsche 908. Featuring special shock absorbers and titanium coil springs, the suspension was set up for performance. The 914S was recognized by slightly larger wheel arches, an air inlet for the oil cooler in the bumper, and an external tank filler neck and wider housings for the dual pop-up headlights. A second 914S with 260 horsepower and road homologation was given to Ferry Porsche on his 60th birthday. The Grand Prix White 911 Carrera RS 2.7 with green lettering and Fuchs rims exemplified the concept of lightweight construction. Many body parts were made of plastic or thin sheet metal. Inside, there was no sun visor for the passenger and no clock in the dashboard. The front and rear side windows were made of very thin glass. The sports seats weighed less than the conventional seats, and the manufacturer dispensed with headrests and rear seats. At the launch of the Porsche 911 Sport Classic 2022, this car from the Porsche Museum collection was present. The newly developed 2.7-liter 6-cylinder boxer engine with direct fuel injection developed by Hans Metzger and Valentin Schaefer produced a powerful 210 horsepower at 6,300 RPM in the 911 Carrera RS 2.7. Porsche developed the 911 Carrera RSR 3.0 as a successor of the 911 Carrera RSR 2.8 for the 1974 season. Distinguishing features included the large air vents on the fenders and the larger classic turbo-style rear spoiler. The engine was boosted to a 3-liter displacement and power was increased to 330 horsepower. A racing gearbox with changeable gear ratios transferred the power to the rear wheels. The brake system originated from the Porsche 917. The RSR rang in a new era in customer sports cars. It became one of the most successful racing cars in Group 4. Porsche gives the most powerful car developed from the 935 the nickname Moby Dick after the great white whale. It is the first race car with water-cooled cylinder heads. It finished the 6 hours of Sebring race with a 7-lap lead. At Le Mans, it achieved a speed of 366 kilometers per hour on the straight thanks to its excellent aerodynamics, but misfiring and an oil leak caused it to fall back to 8th place. After 2 further races, Moby Dick heads to the museum. Porsche conceived the 956 with the so-called ground effects for the Group C. It was sucked to the track surface by a specially shaped underfloor, increasing cornering speeds considerably, but also theoretically, when this Porsche 956 hits 324.1 kilometers per hour, its aerodynamics show that it could drive on the ceiling. So many Porsches, so little time. From concept to this amazing Porsche 959, likely their first true supercar. Ideas become lines, lines become drafts, and drafts become winning racing engines, at least if they bear Hans Metzger's signature, that is. In November 1981, the engineer sat down with a blank sheet of paper to create a Formula One engine. In its first outing in summer 1983, the V6 turbo engine of just 1.5 liters was able to deliver a maximum of 720 horsepower. Over the next 3 years, its peak performance increased to over 1,000 horsepower. Metzger's bold draft was rewarded in the form of 25 Grand Prix victories for the Porsche engine in a McLaren chassis. Then we have the 964, 924, and 993 Porsche police car. This gorgeous 993 turbo, 944 turbo driveline, and who can forget the 928? and finally the last version of the great 944, the 968. Porsche also built the amazing 500e W124 for Mercedes-Benz from 1990 to 1995 with its high-performance 5-liter V8 engine. During a difficult economic period, Porsche design engineers boldly decided to go on the offensive. At the 1993 Detroit Motor Show, Porsche presented a design study of a classic mid-engine roadster that was very well received worldwide. The styling of the show car combined with elements of the Porsche 356 No. 1 Roadster and the Porsche 550 Spyder. The strong response led to the series production of the Boxster, which began in autumn of 1996, although none of the Boxster production cars look as light and stunning as the show car version. I know that it's sacrilege, but I've always been more interested in the smaller Porsches like the Boxster because they're smaller and lighter than the 911, which I guess is why I currently own a 718 Spyder. Now, the Porsche 928 GTS was launched in autumn 1991 as the last evolution of the series that have been produced since 1977. The 928 was to replace the 911, but there was so much pushback from Porsche purists and the 911 lived on. Visually, the top 928 model is distinguished by its super wide rear fenders, the rear spoiler, and the exterior color and a continuous light panel at the rear. The revised V8 featured 5.4-liter displacement, 4-valve cylinder heads, a resonance intake system, and electronic mapped ignition. This 911 GT1 from 1998 was one of the very few street versions built of the GT1. And here's the racing version of the GT1. Who doesn't love a great cutaway? Here's the 5th generation of the 911, the version 996. A new era and a new Porsche adventure. The 5th generation of the Porsche 911 broke all conventions. Everything about the 996 was new, apart from the Boxer principle of the 6-cylinder engine and the iconic 911 design. The engine was water-cooled rather than air, and to cut costs, the 911 shared parts with its little brother, the Boxster. Many fans loved it for its headlamps with integrated indicators, while some others weren't all that excited about the new look. No, this is not Max Verstappen's trophy case. Porsche as a manufacturer has won more races than any other manufacturer worldwide. This is just a small sample of their trophy. At the Paris Motor Show in 2000, Porsche presented a near-production concept for a super sports car named Carrera GT. Both the carbon fiber chassis and the 10-cylinder naturally aspirated mid-engine were based on pure racing technology. The Carrera GT was meant to cultivate the character of a racing car for a road car in order to maximize the driving pleasure. As part of the development team, Walter Röhrl was responsible for the fine-tuning and completed endless laps on the Nürburgring to set up the suspension perfectly. And who can forget that somewhat clumsy-looking four-door Porsche, the Panamera? And then there's the Widowmaker, the GT2 with the engine from the Porsche Turbo. Now we're entering 2010 and beyond, where we end up at the Porsche world-class hybrid supercar, the 918 Spyder. Moving on to the 919 hybrid race car, fresh from the track and in desperate need of a bath. Then we head over to the Electra Porsche era with the Taycan and Formula E. Too bad about all that weight and that pathetic sound. This great montage of pictures shows the evolution of Porsche over the years. In 1946, Italian entrepreneur and racing enthusiast Piero Duccio hired Porsche Engineering to develop his new Cisitalia brand. This single-seater is powered by a supercharged 12-cylinder engine and put that power to the road with its driver-engaged four-wheel drive system. The car never made it past test stage due to, well, financial difficulty. The Type 64 was based on the series development of the Volkswagen and was supposed to compete in the Berlin-Rome long-distance race of September 1939. Although the outbreak of the war prevented the race from being held, 2 more cars were actually built. The streamlined aluminum body with a coefficient of drag value of 0.28 was far ahead of its time. The experience gained with the project marked an important milestone on the way to an independent sports car manufacturer after the war. The engineering office used the completed racing cars as both high-speed touring cars and test cars. And at one point, the Porsche name was actually put onto the front of the car. I just love this working model of the classic Boxer engine with opposing cylinders and compact flat design. The Sasha compact car created in 1922 as a racing version of a planned production 4-seater. Thanks to its maneuverability and efficient power utilization, it recorded 43 race victories, among them the class victory at at the Targa Floria. Ferdinand Porsche used racing to test the suitability of his designs under extreme conditions. With the Sasha, he established and pursued one principle: the power-to-weight ratio would become a key feature of all Porsche sports cars. This value describes the vehicle weight in relation to each horsepower. Under the leadership of Ferdinand Porsche, Austro-Daimler developed powerful aircraft engines with 4 to 12 cylinders prior to the First World War. The work eventually led to the development of observation planes to provide artillery support during the war. Porsche expects the vehicles on display at the Porsche Museum to basically speak for themselves, although there is this 40-foot-long area of multi-touch wall which allows visitors to immerse themselves in the history of Porsche on an interactive, virtual basis at the end of their tour. Click here for your next video on the process for picking up a Porsche rental car from the Porsche Museum to truly make your visit unforgettable, and I'll see you there.